Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm Diana Kruzman, guest hosting the podcast. I'm no longer in Kyiv, Ukraine, but the organization I'm speaking with today is based there. So I'm here with Kolko Trefers, who is the CEO of Roskvit Urban Coalition for Ukraine, which is an organization that's focused on reimagining urban planning to be more sustainable, and has a lot of really interesting ideas about what Ukraine should look like after the war is over. So yeah, I would love to dive right in. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about yourself and how you got started in this space in general, and then also with Roskvit.
Thanks a lot. Really happy to be here and joining this podcast. My name is Kolko Trefers, and I'm from the Netherlands actually, but I've been working in Ukraine since 2015. I was invited to be part of a project about Mariupol, a city that I've never heard of before, but it was a city that had a challenging question because it was in between the Donbass and the Crimea area. So. And there was an artist initiative, Izolatsia from Kiev, that said we have to think about what is the future of this city, being so twisted in between those two occupied territories. I think it was the New York Times that at that time also wrote about it. Okay, Mariupol is going to be Putin's new candy. Well, we now know how actually true that appeared to be, unfortunately. But at that time, 2015, it was like challenging how to think about that city, and that kind of changed my career a lot, because I had the feeling that being there and developing a huge network right away in those couple of months that I worked there, I felt that I could make so much more impact as an urban planner in, let's say, in the world. I mean, in a global context, on not on the just looking at the Dutch soil oil only, but just looking wider. Where can I be of a best contribution? And so I kind of stayed or went up and down many times, and decided after COVID, well, Ukraine is really booming. Really understand the country a little bit by then, and got this network, was teaching there, was developing there, not developing projects in planning projects, but developing as a network. And I was advising for many municipalities in consulting and designing for projects. And okay, let's move there was the idea. Let's move to Kharkiv, at least partially. And then my wife and me were literally walking around with the real estate manager to find this apartment. And at that moment, it became code red. So that means that the Dutch ministry decided every Dutch person should leave Ukraine. Of course, I can make my individual choices still, but that was the moment that we decided, okay, let's move out. And we took the last plane to the Netherlands with a lot of negative emotions and bad energy, because we didn't believe the war would start. And actually then, again, we were wrong. As I was wrong about Mariupol, I was also wrong about this. And so I learned really, okay, with this country, this neighbor country, we must think the unthinkable. We must think the unexpected. We must plan without knowing, because we cannot even imagine that something like this could happen, but it can happen. And this is also those sentences I keep also close to my professional career right now. Think the unthinkable, or planning with uncertainties. And then 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion, so this was 1 week before they really entered. And then 2 weeks later, my good friend and colleague Oleg Drozdov, he called me, and he just left Kharkiv with his family, with his his school that he founded, his Kharkiv School of Architecture, and with his architecture studios, everything to the west of the country. And he said, Fulko, we have to think of a new project, and that's about recovery. And that was flabbergasting that after such a moment in such a short time, I mean, the tanks were surrounding Kiev. It was really, but he already thought, okay, they're not going to get us. We will survive, and let's already think about what is the next step. And next day, I decided, yes, I'm going to do that. So I quit pretty much everything I did in the Netherlands, and this was my new project, or my new thing out of, and that later became called Roskvit Urban Coalition for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. So when did you make the decision to come back to Ukraine? Like how quickly after the full-scale invasion started?
I think the first time I was there again was beginning of May, so 5, 6 May, something like that, which was just after first month. So it was kind of clear that it was not like one big walkover. And the timing was not that good because it was also close to this national military day or something like that in Russia, so that they wanted to prove something extra. So it was kind of a hectic first night. But anyway, so it was the first timing was after a little bit more than 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we recorded the first video of our launching ourselves and the name. And so that was also a moment for us to physically be together, because before that, in the previous month, we collected a large network of people that were close to the academy, close to my network, close to Oleg's network. And we started thinking about it. So should we indeed do something about recovery? Does it make sense? Is it appropriate to think about it already? And everybody said the same. Yeah, let's do it. This is the moment, because we cannot wait with that, because what we've seen in Lebanon, because what we've seen in Bosnia, because of so all the examples from all around the world, recent examples, long-term examples, they all show the same. Start with that as soon as possible. And we had a large group of super nice and super experienced people who all had some connection to Ukraine, because family from there, because they've been working there, because they were just simply Ukrainians. The majority was Ukrainians. And then we said, okay, we feel we can do it, but we also have the responsibility to do it. And that we launched and publicly launched, 1.5 months later, like at the beginning of May.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, actually, could you talk a bit more about that kind of background? Because you mentioned some of these other places. What are the examples of how it could go awry, maybe, and how did you learn from that?
Well, it was both fascinating but also depressing in those first months, that when you talk with people who have been through it as an experience, living it in Lebanon or Sarajevo, for example, or other Bosnian cities, you start asking them, okay, what are the do's and don'ts? Right? So for us, what should we do? What should we not do? And actually, yeah, that's a very good question. And they came with all kinds of advices. And actually, when I started writing everything down, everybody had only don'ts. The list of don'ts was major. Because there were all the mistakes that have been made in their cities, in their countries, and that they have to live with it right now. Not only in post-war context, but also other post-traumatic situations like Katrina, New Orleans, or Christchurch and the earthquake. So all the same mistakes were made. Fast decisions, too fast, too political, too practical, no quality, no participation, no. And so there was only don'ts. Don't do this because that's what we did. Don't demolish the heritage that you still have because it's standing in the way, because it's almost cracking. And it was this long list of don'ts, but hardly any do's.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly any recommendations. Okay, here this worked really well. No. And that was, like I said, depressing. It was, but we turned it around, and we saw that it still gave us a lot of inspiration, and a lot of not only from the people were experiencing it, but also from those academic researches that have been done in some of the cities. They have done really, really great research afterwards. But then we tried to rephrase it into some kind of values, not exactly knowing what we should do, because it was the first few weeks or the first few months, but at least to say, okay, we have values that we build on. And those are the values that we stand for. That's how we're going to work. And we try to live according to those and work according to the values as much as possible. And there were 5 values from the very beginning. And we reviewed them a couple of times in the last 3.5 years. And it's actually still the same 5. Quite happy with that actually, but also sort of proud of that. So in the very first week, we defined with this whole group online in times of beginning war, the value of people first, so the social value, and it means that we don't build because of the building, we don't build because of stones or architecture quality. We want to do something, recover the country for the people, and that is also has to do with it connects to social values for what kind of people, the most vulnerable people maybe, or what kind of process do you use, and that's the participation approach comes in there clearly. So that is value 1. It's like people or social/shelter. The second one is sustainability, and that is sustainability in terms of green or eco or energy, all that agenda, but also sustainability in terms of what does it mean, what you do now for the future perspective. So do you do something that builds on, that's the start of building on top of something new, that you can continue it. So it's more like sustainable plus continuities. And this is crucial for us because many of the examples that we had, we saw the disconnection between short-term urgent solutions and long-term perspectives. I need a house now, I build it here. Very practical example, and I could on different scales as well, but a very practical example, if your house is being bombed or shot down by a tank, there's only a few walls and the fundaments are still there, and you get let's say a container to use on your plot. All the people started putting that container on the fundaments. Makes sense because if the fundaments are there, so you put it there. There used to be a house there, you put it there again. But then actually there's no space around you to build a new proper house. And actually, if you find it, if it's big enough, then still you have to rebuild the fundament, the foundation of your new building. Sorry. The practical thing is, if you would just have put the container 5 meters aside next to it, because the container doesn't need fundaments, it needs just a few tiles, and you can put it there, and then it's good enough for 1 or 2 years. In the meantime, you can build up your own house, which they can. I mean, it's what they can do very easily in Ukraine with the help of friends, with the help of the people around them. You rebuild your house in the original state, and you can take the container out. I see still, after 4 years, so many people living those first urgent emergency houses, and no opportunity, because it's too complicated, or too small, or too negative, no opportunities to build something new on their spot. And this is like a spot on one individual house, but I can think of the same with emergency housing for more internal refugees, or with reallocating companies, or with renewing some kind of energy infrastructure. Every time the same things happen, that the short term and the long term, or even the midterm, are not connected. They just should think 1 or 2 steps ahead. So this is the continuity / sustainability value. And then the third one is about ethics. So of course, the topic of transparency and anti-corruption comes in. Also ethics as an organization. We are an NGO. We are working according to some values of payment, but also the ethics of how we look at the Ukrainian concepts and identity first. Number 4 is the topic of networking. Ukraine cannot do it alone. And Ukraine, but also the international community cannot do it without Ukraine. So the network is crucial, and especially in the beginning, that was very clear. But we still work like that. So we don't ever work alone. We always try to build consortiums. We try to build partnerships with universities, with other NGOs, with local activists, with the players in every different field. It's always a network that brings the movement and not our own. It's not about us. It's about the movement. And number 5 is education, because in this shrinking economy and where the brain drain is huge from the 90s already, and then later on as well, the educational part we knew was going to be a large value of what we could do. And that is number 5. In everything we do, we see it back. So we educate our own people to become more professional. We educate all the people that we work for the municipalities. So it's always part of a project. There's some kind of an educational format, not just learning something, but really educational formats that are involved to develop. Because again, it's not just a project. Every project has to have more spin-offs, has to have like a movement, has to create something, because the country and the challenges are too big to just make ad hoc decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for going through that. And I want to hone in a bit on the second value of sustainability, because I really like what you said about thinking about short-term versus long-term thinking. So you brought up one example of what you've seen of like short-term thinking, and I was wondering if you could dive a little bit more into what you're seeing, or kind of what are some of the decisions that are made in the immediate aftermath of this kind of destruction. Like what other kind of pitfalls are there, or things you can end up doing?
Yeah, thanks. There's beautiful examples, and there's also quite a challenging examples, but all of them make some kind of sense. So first of all the Ukrainians know that this war is not the last challenge for Ukraine or for the world. So they definitely know that the next one is going to be climate change. It's already all around, but they experience it even. But first things first survive, and then so that it makes sense to think like that. But they are not stupid. They're not naive. This will be a part of their next steps, and also connecting to all the European Union talks they have, all the negotiations, all the, let's say, projects or interventions or grants or consortiums that they're building. It's always in there. This sustainability question is always there. And of course, energy is easier, even though nuclear power is a big issue and very cheap in Ukraine traditionally. So thinking about energy related to nuclear power is also kind of a delicate topic. But on the other hand, the energy is the engineering. You can measure it. You can calculate it. That is what Ukraine is really good at. When you think about circular approaches, or when you think about more ecologically eco-friendly planning, or landscape planning, or eco-friendly agriculture, those kind of aspects, especially on the regional scale or national scale, it's, I would say, underdeveloped compared to, for example, the country I originally come from the Netherlands. But not that they don't want it, but it's just not, there are not so many examples. So but the same discussions as I see in Western Europe are happening in Ukraine. Some of them like it, some of them not, some of them believe in it, some of them are fighters for it. And that is a very logical process. But on the scale of Ukraine, it makes a huge impact. And on the momentum that we have now, we want to use that momentum to move, to leap forward, to if you're going to rebuild the agricultural sector, whether it's needed or not, I don't exactly know, but then let's do it now. This is the moment to prepare for that. If you want to think about the building sector and using more eco-friendly materials in your buildings, this is the logical moment. Because a lot of building projects gonna start, a lot of expected new economic opportunities will arise. Let's use this momentum for all those aspects. But just the experience is not that much. Now you see during the war, all those experiments are working. All of them. I mean, sometimes just on paper, sometimes just in like event spaces or in the small pilots. And sometimes, or in reality, And then we challenge ourselves, okay, what are we facing? And very often it's legislation, or very often it's more like the skills of the workers that are standing in the way, but it's not the will of the investors, or it's not the will of the people who live there. But it's, yeah, you have to get all of those things aligned. And then in the sustainability, eco aspects, then Ukraine can leap forward. Does it always work? Like I said, not yet. Is the urgency and the understanding there? More and more likely. But of course, the longer the war is and the more survival mode maybe the country will get in, yeah, the less of energy, but also interest or possibilities, financial possibilities to really work on that. It will become less and less. It's logical, I would say, but cynical, and because it makes the next challenge bigger.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What has been the response that you've gotten from, the government and others that are kind of like, really decision makers in this space? Is it something that it seems like they're receptive to, or are you still pretty much like pushing back against some of this inertia?
Both. So there's a few governments that really think, okay, yeah, this is the future. Let's try. We already have this network in our city, or we already have some experience. Let's move on. So there's cities like Rivne or Kremenchuk that really feel that, they understand it, they learn, they develop, they have more specialists on that. So those things are happening. But on the other hand, there's also a group, even in those two cities as well, who say, if it's not needed by law, why should I do it? Why should I invest more money than strictly needed? Because the legislation defines our base of competition to compare to our competing developers or architects. So let's do what is needed. And the change of law is now, of course, slow. I mean, it's the government, it's so extremely busy with dealing with all the international attention, with all the military questions, with all the social questions connected, with all the humanitarian questions, the medical questions. I mean, then thinking about changing the legislation on some kind of bio-based list of materials, nice, but not now. Like something like people say, and I can imagine. I mean, they're understaffed. There's a lot of people who change jobs because they left the country, or they have, for some other reasons, maybe they're mobilized. So there's a lot of changing. There's a lot of learning, and then it's always prioritizing. And is this, compared to the list that I just gave, is this the priority number one? No. Is it number 200? Also no. It is quite high in the top, but not everything is effectuated yet. So I see the interest. I see also that they are receptive to it. I see that some are really moving forward there and urging it, want to be the front runner cities or something like that. Some of them are a little bit opportunistic. I do it because there's a grant opportunity there, or I do it because of whatever. And some of them are just waiting to see what happens, because I'm sorry, I'm busy.
Yeah.
I'm tired. Yeah.
Of course, it's understandable. What are some laws that you think need to be passed in order to encourage this kind of development?
I'm not a legal specialist, but I do know that there's a few topics where I think that, like in any country, in Ukraine, this change should be made. Materials is one of them. So the list of materials that are, so it's not directly the law, but it's those certificates that are needed for building, that should be updated. One of the practical examples could be that we could just say in Ukraine, well, let's copy the list of materials from France. If it's good enough in France, why wouldn't it be good enough in Ukraine? Or maybe a combination of France and England and Denmark, and then you have your new list. That would make some things really much easier. But officially, all those things need to be certificates in Ukraine with some special protocols that every country has, but in times of war, it's really difficult to change, and it's also slow, and the opportunities are now. So that is one of the things that I'm constantly trying to think of. Can we be more creative to get these like you can always make some kind of exception, some kind of pilot project. Well, then like a permanent pilot project or something, you need it for that, which is argumentably makes sense because the others do it as well. That is one option or one topic. So the materials, building materials. I do see some opportunities in energy, like I said, with but that is delicate. So to think and rethink the energy sector, because it's delicate because they're being bombed constantly. It's delicate because the nuclear power is so much cheaper than the rest and taking such a large part as well. So that's also delicate. And that well, but at least there I expect some change should be done, but I'm not in the middle of that discussion. And for me, the last one would be that pretty much on every planning scale, so whether it's regional or national planning, like or more local master planning, or neighborhood planning, on every scale, the requirements that are mentioned in the law are very much related to building construction and maybe something like the amount of playgrounds, but really not so much about ecological quality. So you see that, and also river planning, river basin management, you see is a very technical approach. It was in many of the countries actually, but in some of the countries that has changed into a combination of technical and more social and natural recommendations or requirements, and that is not there yet. So there's where this Dnieper River project, what we found out that the potential of that river is mainly found in adding to the basic engineering requirements about safety of the dams or the concrete, or about water management and where does the water go for what amount, for what money, how clean should it be. So very technical aspects to add the ecological and the natural and the biodiversity questions to that, or not questions, the requirements to that. Just make a simple list of social, ecological and cultural aspects part of the planning institutes, because now always I call it the engineers always win, because they have the law and they have to follow that law, and if then that means that maybe sometimes you have a conflict between their opinion as engineers and maybe cultural anthropologists as on the other side, they can always show this law and then you always lose, not because it's a bad idea, but because it's not in balance in how the baseline is there. Mm-hmm. So there, I believe, on any scale, really any scale, that some improvements can and should be made, and I don't blame them that it's not happening. To be sure, right? So, but it's that is the challenge where we should go when we talk about the content of the topic of sustainability.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.